Hi, this is Nathan Beverly, and welcome back to Call for Salt. I am back on my cell phone. I may be back on the cell phone instead of the software program that I have for a good little bit longer. We just moved houses, and there's boxes everywhere, and so it's interesting. But I wanted to discuss this the information in the news about Liz Cheney and losing her primary seat in Wyoming, and how she, her relationship to Donald Trump, and what that comparison is to Never-Trumpers in general. I've obviously titled this video Cheneys Cheerleaders, because there are a lot of people. It is a minority of Republicans, it's a minority of conservatives, but there are a lot of people that are like Liz Cheney, where they are conservative, at least on paper, but they actually have so much of a strong dislike, if not hate, for Trump himself, that that colors everything that they say when it comes to politics. In fact, oftentimes we find these people wanting to align more with liberals, if they have to, than with anything to do with Trump. And I find it very troubling, but I find it very, uh, I have a lot of questions. It is really surprising to me. It really still is surprising. Liz Cheney, if you can put a face on conservative never-Trumpism, that's Liz Cheney. Liz Cheney has made a name for herself. She now, granted, she's conservative. I don't want to call her a full rhino, because she is a Republican. She votes along with the Republican platform. In fact, she voted 93% of the time with Donald Trump with his agenda. So we got to give her credit for that. But I suspect the whole thing with Liz Cheney was that Trump was highly critical of her father, Dick Cheney, and W. Bush, that administration. He felt that they were, among many things, way too hawkish and wanted wars, endless wars, as they call it, among other things that he disagreed with them on. And I believe that she harbored a lot of resentment towards him. Bush Sr. actually came out publicly and stated that he voted for Hillary Clinton. That's how much, at least, the elders in the Bush dynasty were against. Now W. Bush voted, and Laura voted third party. So they were very, from the beginning, anti-Trump, because I think that they were concerned that Trump was, too much of a, he didn't have decorum. He was too much of a fighter. He was dividing, and they saw that as rocking the establishment, and they were a solid part of the establishment. Liz Cheney could be the definition of the Republican establishment. She could be the what you think of when you think of that. But so Liz Cheney, I believe she's always had a strong dislike for President Trump, even if she voted with him. But we see there's a lot of people, and this is one of the reasons why I left my church, is because the main reason that I left the church that I was previously in, and now am in another church, a better church. But this church was solid on their conservative theology. They were very solid. But there was a vocal minority within the church that were very much never Trump, quote unquote. They would call themselves politically conservative, most of them. And they were never Trump, and they would put stuff out on social media, and they had an outsized influence. And the church leadership just would not deal with it because it had to do with politics. They didn't want to touch it with a 10-foot pole. So I found myself having to leave because these people were pushing the needle to the left. They were jumping on the social justice BLM bandwagon, and they were criticizing Trump and Trump supporters many times, and it just didn't. You just were left scratching your head and wondering, are these people even on our side? Do they understand the gravity of what's happening in this country, and that it's under threat, it's under attack by the left? But these these people were very similar to Liz Cheney, and I want to bring that out. I want to bring out what I feel is the problem with Never Trumpers, the core of the problem. Well, before we do that, I want to give a little history as how I understand the whole reason that Liz Cheney gives as an excuse to go against Trump. This is her official excuse. She claimed that January 6th was the last straw, and how Trump handled that, and how Trump, at the very least, fomented this insurrection, quote unquote, insurrection and riot on the Capitol. Now, first of all, what happened on January 6th? First of all, the vast majority of people, as we know it, had nothing to do with the actual riot, did not breach the Capitol, but were there for very legitimate, in their minds, very legitimate reasons. They believed that the election had been stolen. There were, and clearly, I think very few people can argue, there were a lot of irregularities on, during the 2020 election because of the COVID rules and absentee ballots and how they were counted and how they were allowed to come in afterwards. I mean, there were so many irregularities. Multiple polling stations in multiple important swing states. The Republican people that poll watchers were told, they were forced out. They were not allowed in to watch the counting. That was a huge deal right there. There were so many suspicious things, and yes, this went before judges, but they constantly did not. They threw it out of court. They never let Trump and his attorneys have the case heard on the merits. So these people, even the Supreme Court, they turned it down on a technicality and would not hear the case on the merits. So they didn't feel like they had a fair day in court. Trump felt like the election was stolen. That's arguable, but and even myself, I don't know for sure that it was stolen. I tend to lean that way. I used to believe it a lot stronger than I do now, but even so, there were a lot of people that felt like the election was stolen. So they felt like they needed a protest. Perfectly legal. Trump encouraged this, but he encouraged them to do it. He made a public statement on social media to do it peacefully. Yet we had a minority, a fringe minority, that got into this mob mentality, will let emotion drive them, and breached the Capitol. Now, we can call it violent because they broke some windows, they pushed and shoved, but they did not kill or individually harm anybody. The only person that actually was killed was somebody that was on the protester side, who was shot by the Capitol Police. It was tragic. But all of that to say that it was wrong what they did. They broke the law. They disrupted the certification in the government of Biden from him being certified. It was not the right way to do it. It was not the right way to protest. They broke laws, and I'm not defending that. But you have to understand it from their perspective. Some people felt like they had no other recourse. I get that. I don't understand that they felt that this was the way to do it. But Trump called for peacefulness in this protest. So no, it wasn't right. But Trump, you cannot pin that on Trump. It's on them that made the illegal breach. But I believe that this was Cheney's excuse to let her claws out, if you will, to show her true colors of how much she hated Trump and to go on a literal crusade against him and to try to do everything she could to make sure that he could not run, whether he could be indicted or whether he was so damaged by this January 6th committee that he could not run. Now, what happened in the January 6th committee? Why was it? I call it a kangaroo court because it really wasn't fair. First of all, there's three people I really want to highlight. Pelosi. We all know Nancy Pelosi is a far leftist. Nancy Pelosi departed from the normal rules, the traditional rules of committee, how to select committees. She was the majority leader in the House, so she got to decide the majority people of members on the committee. So she picked her Democrats, and normally it would be a Republican that could pick the minority, which would be in this case, two Republicans to sit on the committee. The minority leader had picked two really good pro-Trump Republicans, and of course you had the three anti-Trump Democrats. But because Pelosi is the majority, she changed that whole tradition, and against all protests, against all precedents before, she decided to overrule that and to choose the Republicans herself. And guess who she picked? She picked Liz Cheney and Adam Kinzinger, another Never Trump Republican from Illinois. So the deck was stacked against Trump from the beginning. He didn't have any friends, anyone sympathetic to him on this committee. They all wanted him neutralized. And so they called in witnesses. They had this whole quote unquote process to determine what was going on. They subpoenaed people, and part of their process, they had this star witness, and her name was Cassidy Hutchinson. I don't know if you remember that name from the news. That I believe it was back towards the end of January, that she was their star witness. She was an aide in the Trump White House, and she was testifying against Trump. So they loved her, right? So what was it about her that they loved? They loved what she said, but what she said was crazy, and and her credibility was later completely destroyed. Cassidy Hutchinson said that she was told by a friend or an associate of the Secret Service that was driving Trump in the limo on January 6th of a story that Trump insisted that they turn around and go back to the protest because he wanted to be involved. You can hardly blame him for that. He wants to be with his people. He believes the election is stolen. He wants to be involved. He wants to protest. And she claims that what she was told was they told him, no, we're not going back. We can't do that, Mr. President. So he reaches from the back seat, supposedly, and grabs the steering wheel and tries to get the driver to turn around. When the driver does not, the Secret Service in the back seat restrains Trump, tries to pull him off the steering wheel, but Trump takes his other hand and reaches and grabs the driver's throat and tries to choke him or strangle him. And this was reported. The media ran with this story. They ran with it like it was gospel. They just stated it right out. Trump tried to strangle, Secret Service, the driver in a limo and all of this. And it was just, we found out later it was absolutely a lie. How did we find that out? And that's the third name that I want to talk about. The third person, we got Pelosi. She set the stage completely, stacked the deck already. Second, star witness, Cassidy Hutchinson. She was a liar. I mean, she came up with this crazy, fantastical type story. Okay, we'll see why it was a lie. The third thing was Bobby Engel. Bobby Engel was the Secret Service agent in the backseat with Trump, and he was the one that supposedly tried to restrain Trump and pull him back off the steering wheel. Well, he was not allowed to testify. Liz Cheney and company, Pelosi and company did not allow him to testify. But what they did was they pulled him aside and they questioned him like all the other people that were involved privately in a room. And so, according to his testimony privately in that room, he debunked. He said that never happened. He said the only thing that he correlated with what Cassidy Hutchinson said was that Trump argued with him and said he wanted to go to the Capitol, and they basically said no, and they didn't go. But he said that Trump never grabbed for the steering wheel and never tried to choke the driver. That was not true, and he said that he and the driver were prepared to testify to this end, to testify of what really happened. So who are we going to believe? An aide that heard a story from a friend of a Secret Service agent, or the actual Secret Service agents, two of them? The Bible says when there are two witnesses, right? Two witnesses, and they would not. This January 6th committee would not allow them to testify. They had the narrative that they wanted with Cassidy Hutchinson. Why would they allow somebody to come in and contradict that? Why would they allow the truth to actually come out? But see, that's the kind of thing that happened. And even then, we had like the news media ran with it. They ignored it. But Newsweek has been known for being liberal in the past. Recently I've noticed they're a little bit more neutral. They have some good articles here and there, but they twisted this one around. They said, they had an article back in January, you can look it up. It stated that, it said Bobby Engel's testimony, title was Bobby Engel's testimony was consistent with Cassidy Hutchinson. That is a complete lie. by and large, what he had to say actually contradicted what she said and showed her to be a lie. They're trying to make it sound like, oh, it backed up what she said. No, it did not. The most important part about grabbing the steering wheel and trying to choke the guy, that's the most important part. That's what he says didn't happen. The only thing that is consistent, and they stated this in the article, when you actually read the story, you're like, oh, that's not what it was at all. The title of this thing is twisted and is so misleading. It's not consistent. The only consistent thing was that Trump wanted to go to the January 6th, and he talked to Bobby Engel about that, tried to get him to turn around the clock, but they didn't. Trump didn't take it any further than that. That is how the media twists things. And people like Never-Trump conservatives, they would rather listen to liberal media, and they would rather discount conservative media and say it's all conspiracy theories, because they want to believe what they want to believe. But why? Because they cannot stand Trump. They cannot stand him because of his lack of decorum, his mean tweets, his name calling, you name it. They don't like it. They think they're better than that. They think, and so we just can't have a president. We cannot bring ourselves that low. So we'll give up the farm. We'll give up the country. We'll allow the country to burn rather than to have someone like that in office. And my thing is, what would Jesus do? What do you think Jesus cares more about? Does Jesus care more about having, a perfect politician, this purest person that is going to be a statesman at all times and speak politely? Of course, we should look for leaders like that. But if it's a choice between that and a person that is going to tear this country down and abuse and allow evil to run rampant in this country, and before that and support that, it's not even a contest. You see, Jesus, God, his word says in Romans 13 what government is for. It is to government. The purpose of government and what Trump was all about was law and order, to protect the innocent, to exercise justice on the guilty, and to protect the innocent. That is what government is for. So Trump, yeah, he has character flaws, mean tweets, moral improprieties at least in the past. Just a name calling, mocking his, getting petty oftentimes. But at the end of the day, his policies were just biblical. I don't even know how else to put it. They protected the innocent. They had closed the border. They went after the the child traffickers big time. They went after the drug peddlers. He nominated Supreme Court justices that overturned Roe v. Wade, and he stated in a debate with Hillary Clinton that I am going to appoint not just conservative justices like all the other Republicans say they will have in the past, or strict constructionists, or however they want to put it, but I'm going to put justices on that are pro-life and that will, he said, Roe v. Wade will absolutely be overturned. And that's exactly what happened. He did what he said he was going to do. He's protecting the most innocent among us, unborn babies. What do you think Jesus cares more about? Decorum? Are you kidding me right now? But you have people like Liz Cheney. You have these Never-Trump conservatives that care, that they're just so myopic. How do you say that? They're just so focused in on how Trump is just this offensive fighter type personality that's just turning everybody off. So that's the worst thing in the world, huh? No, I don't think so. There's two words. There's two words I think sum up how Liz Cheney is in her cheerleaders. And I say cheerleaders because if they're not outwardly cheering her on, I believe they're inwardly cheering her on. They look at her as the hero, the martyr, the one that's standing up for principle. You had Russell Moore that wrote an article, said, what can evangelical Christians learn from Liz Cheney back in January? Hailing her as a brave, principled conservative that stands up to Trump. So it's because she's standing up to Trump. It's like David and Goliath. She might not win. She might not be perceived to have a chance of winning, but she's standing up for what's right. But in actuality, it's the opposite. In actuality, it's the opposite. So I think there's two words that come to my mind when I think of Never Trump conservatism, and that is sanctimony. First of all, sanctimony. What is sanctimony? Being sanctimonious or sanctimony means this self-righteous, holier than thou, just looking down on other people for not being principled, and you perceive yourself as being above it all. That is just this. It's arrogance. It's arrogance, and you're so sure that you are right, that nobody else's opinion matters, that you can just speak down to them. All those poor country folk, people that are Trump supporters, they're just fools. They don't get it. They're either dumb, they're being influenced to be these horrible people because of Trump. That drives me crazy. The other word is elitism. Sanctimony and elitism. Elitism is this idea of having this pride in your intellectual abilities, your intellectual knowledge, and that you think because you know more and you are more educated, etc., that you are right. You automatically have a higher place, a better place at the table, and should be listened to more, and you are the experts, and you have a high regard for those that are quote unquote call themselves experts over just the common sense regular person. And we see this in the denominations right now with the social justice coming in. It's just like they're trying to speak to us from a place of a higher authority, like they have, like we should just buy this because it's coming from, they're actually getting it from the world, but it is an elitist attitude. It's like we're above it all, and it's just it's disgusting. It's an arrogant attitude. And I mean, you could combine the two words together. You could call it sanctilitism or something. I mean, that encapsulates what Liz Cheney. What did Liz Cheney do? What kind of attitude did she have when Trump went to help her opponent? By the way, her opponent beat her. Where Liz Cheney used to win by huge margins in her primaries, she won by 73% in her primary last time around. This time, she lost by 37% as the incumbent to a newbie Republican. Because the regular old people in Wyoming, the Trump support, they're like, you done us wrong. You done America wrong. You can't see the forest for the trees, and you're just on this kick against Trump. You're done. But when Trump went to help her opponent and campaign for her opponent, I think it was Hageman. You know what she said? She said, "Bring it." That was her attitude. Arrogance. She was like, "Bring it." She cannot stand Trump, and she is going to have this fight. Talking about she doesn't want to have. She's against decorum. Not having decorum and being statesman. Well, she has no problem not being a statesman with Trump. She'll say, "Bring it." Now, what did she say after that? After she lost, what did she say? She gave a speech, and in her speech, believe it or not, she compared herself to Abraham Lincoln. And she said, because Abraham Lincoln ran for the Senate, he stuck to his principles and he lost, but he went on to become president. She's implying that she's going to run for president. She certainly is giving a lot of hints. But she's comparing herself to Abraham Lincoln. I mean, that's the height of elitism. That's the height of sanctimony. Like, I did what is right, so therefore I should be rewarded. I am an Abraham Lincoln. I am up there I should have my face on Mount Rushmore. No, you're not a hero, Liz Cheney. You're allowing this country to be destroyed just because of your hatred and your dislike for one person's personality. It's just absolutely illogical, but it's absolutely just, it's disgraceful. It's just disgraceful. So this is what I would say if you're a Never Trump. Now, if you're a Trump supporter, Don't be afraid if you've done everything you can to try to reach your church leadership. Don't be afraid to leave your church. Don't leave all divisive like, but just leave and find a better church. People are doing that all over the country, and that's okay because these things matter. If you watch the rest of my videos, you'll see how this actually affects the gospel itself. It's all important. It's very important. But this is what I have to say to any never-Trumpers that call themselves conservatives here. A few things I just want to challenge you with. If you are a believer and I call you my brother and sister in Christ, I want to think the best about your motives. I don't know what your motives are. I don't know if you're trying to virtue signal. I don't know if you just want the praise of men and the world, and that's so you see that, jumping on bandwagons for social justice and all that, and being against Trump is the way to go. I'm not saying that that's your motives. I hope it's not. But maybe the best motives that you can have is that you feel like maybe you're going to turn people away from God by, supporting Trump. Well, you can criticize him, but also support him at the same time. You can criticize him where he needs to be criticized, but support his overall agenda and vote for him. And you don't have to go to his rallies. You don't have to be this Trumper. You don't have to be that way, but you can. But even if you don't, here's what I would like to challenge you with. First, take your head out of the sand. Be willing to listen and look at other sources. Look at conservative media. Don't write it all off as conspiracy theory. Look at Fox News. Fox News is not even pro-Trump enough, if you ask me. But at least start there. Newsmax. Look at that. It's not conspiracy theory. It's not QAnon stuff. Don't put it all in the same boat. Take your head out of the sand and try to give all media, especially conservative media, where you probably haven't given them a fair shot. Second, look at the big picture. Try not to get have myopic vision. Try to see the forest, not just the trees. You're looking at the trees, the individual little things about Trump that are bothering you. But your whole country is burning because the leftists, they're not playing around. If they get power, they're going to destroy and remake this country into something totally different. At some point, you're going to be sorry that you allowed it to happen, that you didn't stand up, that you didn't at least quietly go into a voting booth and vote for Trump, or at the very least, you didn't keep your mouth shut and actually help them by pushing the needle to the left by always criticizing him. So try to be fair. Try to look at things fairly. Try to give him a fair shake. And look at the forest for the trees. Don't be Pharisaical, where they strained at gnats and they swallowed camels. They don't strain at the little things like Trump's tweets, his how he wants to be combative with people that he disagrees with, or petty, or those are relatively small. Those are the gnats compared to the camels, the Democrat Party and their agenda to try to completely destroy this country, to allow illegal immigrants in like crazy. We're talking terrorism. Terrorists can get in. Drugs are pouring in, destroying our communities. The illegal sex trafficking of minors, of children. I mean, we have victims every day. People are in misery every day because of the Democrat Party and the left, and it's only going to get worse. They don't care. They want to remake this country, and they want total control. Try to look at what the issues are that you're comparing. And if you want to be principled, at the end of the day, you still can't stomach Trump, and you can't, your conscience just won't let you vote for him or support him. Do me a favor. Keep your mouth shut. Keep your mouth shut. Don't hurt the cause. Now, even if you do decide to criticize him, even then, at least don't on the same token go and try to compromise and try to find as much common ground with the left and the leftist talking points like social justice and all of these things at the same token. If you're against Trump, I get it. There's some things, I totally disagree with it, but I understand the mindset from a Christian who has a weak conscience. But how can you push the needle to the left? How can you send signals and virtue signal to those friends on the left, like, oh yeah, social justice, good. CRT, yeah, there's systemic racism all over the place. We need to change these things. We need to make, these outcomes all the same. Like, we need to, let legal immigration, that's not a big deal. We got to let the immigrants in. We got to just open up the borders. When you start sending those kind of signals, and when you start compromising on transgender and all of these things, you are sending signals to the left that, hey, we're on your side. We want to be on your side as much as we possibly can. And you're sending signals to the right, to those of us that still believe in the law of God should be enacted into biblical law. Like the Ten Commandments should be reflected in our laws, right? Those of us that believe that, you're sending signals to us that, like, you're going to the left. You're drifting, and you care more about what they think of you than doing what's right according to what the God's law is, and being the salt and light in the national sphere. That is very important. It's very important that you don't drift to the left or appear that you're drifting to the left, because you're sending the wrong signals. You're encouraging the left to be more that way. You're actually pushing the needle to the left when you do that. So if you want to be anti-Trump, if you want to criticize him, it's a free country. But I strongly appeal and urge you not to push the needle to the left if you're going to attack him and attack Trump's supporters. Or even better, if you still can't stomach Trump, just be quiet about it. Just go into the voting booth and vote for your third party candidate if you must. And just be quiet. You don't have to vote for him. You don't have to support him. You can just be quiet. You can stay out of politics altogether. Because you know what? What you're saying and what you're doing is having no consequence on who is going to win. You're not helping anybody. In fact, you're actually, if you were truly living up to your conservative principles, you should be helping Trump. But you actually, by taking yourself out of the game, you're actually more of a help to the liberals. So think about those things. Try to look at the big picture. Please, I love you. I want to be as close to my brothers and sisters in Christ as I can. But it's hard to fellowship with people who are stubborn and have an elitist, this mindset that we're above it all. We're the only adults in the room, because we believe in decorum and we believe that Trump, and true statesmen that are polite all the time. Trump taught us one thing, and we are not backing down now. Trump supporters have learned this, that we are at a stage in this country where the left has shown their true colors, and they're so dangerous that we have to be willing to fight. We have to be willing to say things like the media is the enemy of the people, just like Trump did. We have to be willing to stand up and speak out. We have to fight. We have to be the fighting Republican Party, not just the Republican Party, but the fighting Republican Party. We don't need to be petty, name-calling, mocking, but we need to fight for everything we hold dear, because it's all on the line. It's all on the line. That's what I have to say. I hope I didn't trigger too many people. I hope you're encouraged if you're a Trump supporter. Get out there and don't be afraid. Speak the truth. If people naysayers want to say that you should support Trump, you are liberal, you need to be more liberal, or you need to be more compromising and and you shouldn't support Trump. Just wipe this dirt off your sandals and move on, because these people, for the most part, they're stubborn, and they won't give you the time of day if you don't agree that Trump is not good for this country. He was a great president. He was a great president. Don't be ashamed and don't apologize for that. Trump 2024. Have a good night.